You told me something before we sat down that I have not stopped thinking about. You said, I make about 35 grand a year in Miami taking care of other people's parents. And last month, my own father fell alone in his kitchen. That is the whole contradiction right there. For people hearing that and thinking they already understand the story, they do not. Marisol, what happened that day?
I was in Coral Gables, in this beautiful condo that smelled like lemons and expensive candles, helping a client shower before her daughter came by. My phone kept vibrating in my scrub pocket, and I ignored it twice because the lady I was with had dementia, and if I turned my back too fast, she got scared. On the third call I picked up, and it was my mother crying, not even talking regular, just crying and saying, "Your father is on the floor, your father is on the floor." And I remember looking down at my hands because one hand had a washcloth in it, and the other hand was holding somebody else's mother steady so she would not slip. That was the moment it hit me in the chest. I am here protecting this family from disaster, and my own family is having one without me. I make about $35,000 a year to do work that is intimate, exhausting, and honestly sacred sometimes. And in the middle of doing it, I had to hear my own mother panic through a phone speaker.
That is brutal. And what makes it worse is there is no clean villain in that moment, because you could not just drop the client and run, and your mother still needed you to somehow be two places at once. Give me the shape of your life so people can understand the pressure you were under before that phone call ever came. How old are you? How long have you done this? Who is depending on you? And what does 35 grand in Miami actually feel like once it lands in your account?
I am 41. I have been doing home care for a little over 9 years. First part-time, then full-time, then that fake full-time thing agencies do, where on paper you are close enough to count until benefits come up. I live in Flagami with my daughter. She is 14 and at that age where she still needs you, but she acts like she doesn't. My parents live in Hialeah in the same little apartment they have had forever, and my older brother is in Orlando talking a good game on the phone, which is not the same as showing up with groceries. So when people hear 35,000, they picture a number. I picture my bank app after taxes and health deductions, and on a decent month it feels like I am trying to build a bridge out of wet cardboard. Rent takes the first bite, gas takes the second, then groceries, my daughter's phone, my mother's prescriptions I end up covering half the time, and all of a sudden a paycheck is just a rumor. There are months where I do everything right and still feel behind by the 10th.
That fake full-time line is real. A lot of people outside of care work do not understand how much of your life gets chopped into pieces by split shifts, cancellations, driving, and trying to stay just employable enough for the schedule next week. Walk me through a normal day. Not the dramatic day with your father on the floor, just a Tuesday in the life of a Miami home health aide making this kind of money.
A normal day starts in the dark. I get up around 5 because I like 10 quiet minutes before I become useful to everybody. I make coffee, wake my daughter up twice because once never works, throw on scrubs, and get in the car praying the gas light does not come on at the worst possible moment. First client might be in Kendall, second one in Little Havana, third one way out near North Miami, and the map looks reasonable until you are actually living inside Miami traffic with a cooler in the passenger seat and a missed call from the agency. Some houses are calm. Some feel like grief is sitting at the table with you. You are bathing somebody, changing briefs, making oatmeal soft enough for weak teeth, checking if a leg looks more swollen than yesterday, wiping counters, folding towels, writing notes, smiling at family members who want reassurance you cannot honestly give. Then a client cancels, and that is not a break. That is money disappearing. Then another family asks if you can stay longer, but the extra hour still somehow does not erase the unpaid driving, the wear on your car, or the fact that your back has been tight since 11 in the morning. By the time I get home, I have spent all day holding other people together, and my own face feels like it is made of dust.
When people hear care work, they think the hard part is physical. And I am sure the physical part is no joke. But listening to you, it sounds like the deeper injury is emotional. You are crossing class lines all day, family lines all day, almost life and death lines all day. When did you first start feeling the title of this episode in your bones? I care for other parents while mine age alone?
It started small, which is how the dangerous things usually start. My mother would call and say, "When are you coming by?" And I would say, "Tomorrow." Then tomorrow would become after the weekend. Then after the weekend would become, "I am sorry, this week got crazy." Meanwhile, I am in somebody else's kitchen labeling pill boxes and arguing with an 87-year-old man about why he has to drink water. I know which client likes their toast cut diagonal and which one gets embarrassed if you mention the diaper out loud. I know who starts sundowning around 4:30, who cries after physical therapy, who still reaches for a husband that died 3 years ago. And then I go 2, sometimes 3 days without really seeing my own parents in a way that counts. I am not talking about dropping off groceries and kissing foreheads like a drive-through daughter. I mean sitting down long enough to notice my father's hands shaking more, or that my mother's smile is getting thinner because she is tired in a way she is trying to hide from me. That is when it started to feel ugly inside, that I was becoming deeply fluent in other people's aging while missing my own family's version of it. And even then, I still did not realize how bad it had gotten.
You said even then, which tells me there is a moment after that when the whole thing breaks open. I want you to take me back to the night with your father, but slowly, not the summary version. Give me the exact scene, because I think people need to feel how impossible that moment was in order to understand what this job can really cost.
It was August and stupid hot, even for Miami. My first client that day had canceled, so the agency slid me into an afternoon case with a man in his late 80s who had mobility issues and got agitated if his routine changed. I remember because I was already annoyed, which I hated admitting to myself, and then I got there and he had had an accident. So now I am doing a full cleanup, changing bedding, trying to keep his dignity intact, while he keeps apologizing to me like he is the one failing. My phone rings once, twice, 3 times. On the 3rd time I answer, and my mother is breathing hard, saying, "Your father tried to get up too fast. He slipped. I can't lift him. I think he hit the cabinet." I asked if he was bleeding, and she said, "Yes, a little, I think. I don't know." And that "I don't know" from your mother is terrifying because she is the calm one. I called 911 with one hand and held the client with the other because he was trying to stand up before I got the clean brief under him. I can still hear both voices in my head, my mother panicking on speaker and the client saying, "Mija, mija, I am sorry, I am sorry." And the sickest part is, I kept working, because what else was I going to do? Leave an unstable old man half cleaned on the edge of a bed? By the time I got to Hialeah later that night, after the ambulance and after the hospital and after the waiting, there was a little dried line of blood on the kitchen tile. It was not a huge amount. It was enough. Enough to make me feel like I had outsourced the worst moment of my father's week to chance.
That is the kind of detail that stays with you. Not a dramatic movie scene. A thin line of dried blood on tile. And I have to ask you something that might sound unfair, but I think it matters. You are describing a life that is physically punishing, financially tight, and now morally wrecking you. Why did you stay? Why not say, "I am done. I cannot keep giving this part of myself to strangers"?
Because they are not strangers for long. That is the part nobody really explains to you. You walk into a house as a worker, but after enough mornings helping somebody sit up, enough afternoons hearing the same stories about the old neighborhood, enough nights warming soup and rubbing lotion into paper-thin skin, you stop feeling like a service. You feel like a witness. And I am good at it, Jordan. I do not mean that in a cute way. I mean, I know how to keep somebody from feeling humiliated when their body stops cooperating. I know how to notice fear before it turns into anger. I know how to make a person who feels useless still feel like an adult. There is a kind of pride in that is hard to walk away from. Also, I have worked in facilities, and home care at its best still gives people more dignity, more personality, more softness. So yes, there are days I hate the math. I hate the schedule. I hate the traffic. I hate watching rich families call me family until payroll is due. But the actual care, the hands-on, eye contact, stay with me, let's get through this part together care. I love that more than I am comfortable admitting.
That is where the contradiction gets even sharper, because now it is not just exploitation. Now it is vocation mixed with exploitation, which is harder to untangle. You love the work, but the work is eating parts of your life. So, tell me about the hidden cost that came after that night with your father. What started changing in you at home, with your daughter, with the people who know Marisol when she is not wearing scrubs?
I got shorter. That is the first thing. Shorter with everybody. My daughter would ask me where her black hoodie was, and I would answer like she had accused me of something. My mother would call just to chat, and I would hear need in her voice before I heard love. I stopped being able to transition from care mode to regular human mode. At work, even if you are frustrated, you still have to soften your face, slow your voice, keep the room safe. Then I would come home and have nothing left. No softness, no patience, no spare tenderness. I was in a relationship for a while with a guy who kept telling me, "You are here, but you are never really here." And he was right. I would be sitting on the couch staring at a movie and thinking about whether Mrs. Alvarez took her evening meds, or whether my father remembered to use the grab bar, or whether I could fit an overnight shift in without wrecking the next day. My daughter told me once, and this one hurt. She said, "You are nicer to your clients than you are when you come home." She did not say it mean. She said it like an observation, which somehow was worse, because I knew she was telling the truth.
I want to stay there for a second, because that is a brutal sentence. You are nicer to your clients than you are when you come home. A lot of workers, especially caregivers, hear something like that and instantly go to defense. They say, "You do not know what I carry." But I think there is something deeper here. Did you start to realize that being indispensable at work was making you unavailable in the places that mattered most?
Yes, and I hated that realization because it made me look at myself without the hero filter. In my head, I was this hard-working daughter, hard-working mother, hard-working woman doing what had to be done. But if you strip all the noble language off it, there were also nights where I chose the extra shift because the money scared me more than the guilt. There were times I let the agency guilt me into staying late because I wanted to be seen as reliable, because reliable workers get called first, and being called first means you can breathe a little easier next month. There is ego in caregiving too. People do not like hearing that. Being the one who can handle the difficult client, the one families ask for by name, the one who walks in and settles the chaos, that can become its own drug. You tell yourself you are being needed. Sometimes what you are really chasing is proof that your exhaustion means something. Meanwhile, your own people get the leftovers. That is not villain behavior, but it is not innocent either.
That is one of the most honest things anyone has ever said on this show. Because now we are not in a simple story about a good worker crushed by a bad system. We are in a human story where the system is bad, And also your identity got wrapped around being the person who could carry impossible things. How much of that comes from family, from culture, from being the daughter people expect to step in no matter what?
A lot. I am Cuban, old school. Not performative Miami Cuban where everything is cafecito jokes and flags. I mean the real thing where family duty is not discussed like a value, it is just assumed like gravity. The oldest daughter is supposed to notice. She is supposed to remember birthdays, appointments, who needs refills, who sounded off on the phone, what the doctor meant, what the bill actually says. My mother never sat me down and gave me that speech. She lived it so hard that I inhaled it. So there is this extra layer of shame, because I literally get paid to help elders stay home, stay bathed, stay fed, stay supervised. And then I look at my own parents and think, am I failing the exact people who taught me what care even is? And it gets even uglier than that sometimes. There are days I'm with a client in a gorgeous condo overlooking the bay, and their daughter is calling from New York saying, "Can you just stay another hour?" And I feel this flash of resentment like acid. Not because the old person did anything wrong, because their family can buy what mine has to pray for. Then I feel guilty for feeling resentful while I am buttoning somebody's blouse. That is what the inside of it is like. Not one clean emotion, 5 dirty ones fighting in a closet.
That class contrast is heavy in Miami too. You can drive 15 minutes and move between worlds that barely speak the same emotional language. I want to talk money in a more concrete way, because a lot of the pain you are describing is emotional, but it is being organized by math. When you say 35 grand here feels like wet cardboard, break that down for me. What are the line items that make this life feel impossible, even when you are working all the time?
Okay, so gross pay sounds one way, but what I actually see is way less. After taxes, after the deductions, after the weeks where a client cancels and I cannot fully replace the hours, the monthly number feels like it gets smaller every time I touch it. Rent is the monster. Mine is not some luxury apartment either. It is a basic place in a neighborhood that works because it is close enough to school and close enough to the routes I usually drive. Then gas, because Miami home care without a car is almost a fantasy, unless you want to lose your mind. Then car insurance, which in Florida feels like punishment. Then groceries, and I do not mean cute groceries. I mean rice, eggs, chicken, fruit if it is not insulting that week. Then my daughter's needs. Then all the small leaks nobody budgets for. The copay, the new non-slip shoes because yours are worn, the extra phone bill because your mother needs something set up, the money you send your parents and tell yourself you will make back on Saturday. And there is this insult built into the job where the day can be long without being paid long. A 2-hour gap between clients does not restore you. It just keeps you away from home for free.
That line is perfect. Away from home for free. And it makes me think about how invisible certain kinds of labor are, even when they are intimate. You are inside bathrooms, bedrooms, kitchens, pill routines, family secrets, accidents, fear. You are doing work most people cannot emotionally handle, and still the job gets flattened into low-wage service. When do you feel most invisible doing this?
Funerals. Easy answer, funerals. Or the days right before them. I had a client, Mrs. Perlman, retired teacher, little apartment in Aventura, always wore lipstick even if she was not leaving the house. I took care of her for almost 2 years. I knew how she wanted her hair pinned back, which grandson she trusted, which one stressed her out, what song she wanted when she got anxious, which tea bag she would reuse 3 times because she grew up poor and never stopped doing that. I was there when she got weaker, when swallowing changed, when the conversations got shorter. The week she died, family started filling the apartment, which is normal, but there is this weird shift where suddenly you go from being essential to being furniture. People thank you, maybe hug you, but you can feel the room reclassifying you. Not family. Not quite staff anymore either, just this woman who knows too much and belongs nowhere in the hierarchy of grief. I went to the service and sat in the back. Nobody told me not to. Nobody really told me yes. That is the invisible part. You can know the texture of a person's last year on earth and still not have a clear place to put your sorrow.
That hits hard. Intimacy without belonging. Deep responsibility without real authority. Grief without a seat in the front row. I can hear why this work gets under your skin in a way a normal job never could. Let me ask you the question I think a lot of viewers are asking right now. After the fall, after your daughter's comment, after the money pressure, after feeling halfway adopted and halfway erased in other people's homes, what changed recently that forced you to look at your life differently?
Two things happened in the same week, and it felt almost mean. First, one of my long-term clients, a widow on Key Biscayne whose family has real money, her daughter pulled me aside and said, "If my mother gets worse, would you consider coming on privately, maybe live in for a while?" The number she said was more money than I have ever been offered in my life. Enough money to catch up, enough to help my parents more, enough to breathe for once. Then 3 days later, my mother tells me the owner of their building is selling and they may have to move by summer if the new landlord raises things the way everybody expects. So I am sitting there with this offer in one hand and my parents getting pushed out in the other. If I take the private live-in case, I can probably help financially in a real way, maybe more than I ever have. But I will be even less present. I will literally be living in somebody else's house while my parents get older and my daughter gets older too. It felt like life boiled my contradiction down to one decision and set it on the table in front of me.
That is the twist right there. Because a lot of people expect the answer to be, more money fixes the problem. But more money in your line of work can come packaged as deeper disappearance from your own life. So I do not want the practical answer first. I want the honest one. When you stripped away what everybody needs from you, the client, the agency, your parents, your daughter, Miami rent, all of it, what did you realize you actually want?
I want to come home before my life is done. That is the sentence. I do not mean retirement in some abstract way. I mean I want to still be emotionally reachable while the people I love can still answer back. I want my daughter to remember me as present, not just as hardworking. I want to know my parents in this last chapter as people, not just as another set of tasks I manage between shifts. I want to do care work without letting it swallow every relationship that makes me more than a caregiver. And I realize something ugly but useful. I have been acting like sacrifice automatically equals love. It does not. Sometimes sacrifice is just fear wearing perfume. Fear of being broke, fear of disappointing everybody, fear that if I am not useful every second, then I do not deserve rest. Once I said that out loud, even just to myself in the car, a lot of things started sounding less noble and more desperate.
That is a powerful distinction. Sacrifice is not automatically love. Sometimes it is fear dressed up so nobody argues with it. If your younger self could hear you right now, not the polished version, the real version from inside this whole mess, what would you tell her before she spends 9 years proving how much she can carry?
I would tell her that being good at hard things is not the same as being called to destroy yourself. I would tell her to respect her back, her sleep, her daughter, her own doctor's appointments, because the body keeps score in quiet ways before it starts screaming. I would tell her to ask better questions before taking jobs. Do they reimburse mileage? What happens if a client cancels? How many guaranteed hours are real hours? What benefits actually exist and which ones are brochure decorations? I would tell her to save sooner, even if it is ugly small amounts, because panic makes terrible life choices look reasonable. And I would tell her this one with love. Stop waiting for exhaustion to feel meaningful. You do not have to almost disappear for your work to matter. That lesson would have saved me some shame.
What do you wish people understood about this work that they consistently get wrong? Not the Hallmark version, not the policy version. The thing people misunderstand when they look at someone in scrubs walking into a stranger's house every morning.
That care is not light just because it happens in a home instead of a hospital. People hear home health aide and think companion, maybe housekeeping, maybe some errands. They do not understand how much human decline you are absorbing in close range. You are seeing skin breakdown, confusion, loneliness, family conflict, money conflict, grief, embarrassment, stubbornness, fear of death, fear of being a burden, fear of not being remembered. You are doing body work and emotional regulation at the same time. And because it is feminized work, immigrant heavy work, brown and black women work, low-wage work, people talk about it like it is natural instead of skilled. Like some women just come preloaded with infinite patience and strong backs and should be grateful to use them. No, there is technique in this. There is judgment in this. There is stamina in this. There is moral weight in this. And there is a cost every time society pretends love should be enough to cover what money and systems refuse to.
You are speaking to something bigger than your own story now. The country wants more elders cared for at home. Families are stretched thin, and workers like you are asked to bridge that gap with compassion and very little margin. But I also do not want to lose the personal thread here. Sitting in this conversation, hearing yourself say all of this in order, what feels clearer to you now than it did before we started?
Honestly, I think I have been confusing being needed with being loved. That one hurts. Because my clients need me, my agency needs me when the schedule blows up, my parents need me, my daughter needs me, and I built my whole self around answering that need fast. It makes you feel important, and when you grew up in a family where usefulness was almost a love language, that can fool you for a long time. But love is also boundaries. Love is also showing up not already depleted. Love is also being able to sit at your mother's table without checking the clock every 3 minutes. I do not think I understood that. I thought if I just kept giving harder, everybody would be protected. What really happened is everybody got a version of me that was running on fumes.
So where does that leave the decision in front of you? The private live-in offer, the pressure at home, the money, the guilt, all of it. I know life is not neat, and I am not asking for a movie ending. But what are you actually going to do?
I am not taking the live-in case. I said no, or at least no to that version of it. I asked if they would consider a structured daytime arrangement with set hours, and they might not, and if they do not, I can live with that. I am also talking to another agency and a hospital-based role that pays a little more and has more predictable scheduling, even if I lose some of the intimacy I love in home care. My parents and I are looking at whether they can move closer to me, maybe even into a smaller place nearby, if we can make the numbers stop fighting. None of it is solved. I am still scared. But for the first time in a while, the plan is not just work more and apologize later. That alone feels like a kind of oxygen. It feels less dramatic than people expect, but maybe real change usually does. Maybe it starts as one woman finally refusing to vanish, in exchange for a slightly better check.
That last line is going to stay with me. Refusing to vanish in exchange for a slightly better check. Before we close, I want to come full circle to the image you gave us at the start. Your father on the kitchen floor, your hands full with someone else's parent, your whole life split in half by one ringing phone. If your father hears this episode, if your daughter hears it years from now, what do you hope they understand about the woman in that moment?
I hope they understand I was never choosing strangers over them. I was trying, maybe clumsily and sometimes wrongly, to keep all the worlds I loved from collapsing at once. I hope my father knows that when I got that call, every cell in my body was already in his kitchen, even if my feet were not. I hope my daughter knows that my absence was never indifference. It was a woman getting trapped inside responsibilities she thought she could outrun if she just worked harder. And I hope they both know I am learning. Late, yes, but still learning. Learning that care is not only washing, lifting, charting, driving, paying, fixing. Care is also staying close enough to your own people that they do not become another emergency in your voicemail. That is what I am trying to repair now.
There is a line people use all the time that says care work is invisible. I do not think that is fully true. I think the work is visible when we need it, and invisible when it is time to value it, pay for it, or protect the people doing it. What Marisol described today is not just one worker's burnout story. It is what happens when love, class, aging, labor, and family duty all get piled onto one person's shoulders and then called normal. She makes about $35,000 a year in one of the most expensive cities in the country. She spends her days preserving the dignity of elders, and she is trying to make sure that kind of dignity exists in her own home too. Marisol, thank you for being this honest. Not polished honest, real honest. I think a lot of people are going to hear themselves in you, even if they have never worn scrubs a day in their life.
Thank you for letting me say it plain, because saying it plain is different. When you are in the middle of surviving something, you narrate it in bullet points. Shift, traffic, bills, client, parent, kid, sleep, do it again. But when you actually slow down and hear your own life out loud, you can tell where the pain is coming from and where the lies are too. The lie for me was that I could keep splitting myself forever and call it strength. I cannot. Nobody can. So if somebody out there is listening from their car in scrubs, or from a hospital parking lot, or from a kitchen table with bills spread out, I hope they hear this part. Being needed is not permission to abandon yourself. That is what I am taking with me.